What would you do if the entire neighborhood depended on your farm's power and the HOA tried to shut you down anyway? Intro, dramatic tone. I never imagined our quiet family farm, passed down through 3 generations, would become the target of a full-blown war with a powerful HOA. But one absurd accusation changed everything. They claimed I was running an illegal botanical garden. Ridiculous, right? But when I looked deeper, I uncovered something shocking, something buried since the 1950s. My grandfather's old hydroelectric generator, hidden deep in the woods, wasn't just powering our home. It was secretly supplying the emergency water pump for the entire neighborhood, which meant I controlled whether the toilets flushed when the power went out. And they had no idea. Scene 1. The notice. The trouble started with a letter. A cold, bureaucratic slap to the face. Violation notice, an authorized operation of a public botanical garden. I read it twice, thinking it had to be a joke. My family had worked this land since long before Pinecrest Village and its luxury homes even existed. I stepped onto my porch, coffee in hand, and looked out at the 5 acres I called home. Vegetable plots, a small greenhouse, beehives, but a public garden? Come on. Then the phone rang. It was Tyler, my neighbor and the only other person around here who hadn't sold out to developers. You get one too? He asked. Yeah, I replied. They are saying I'm running a botanical garden. He scoffed. North Star's behind this. That developer's been buying everything up. They want our land, and this is how they push people out. Scene 2. The encounter. Minutes later, a silver SUV crawled down my road and parked near my gate. A woman stepped out, high heels, highlighted hair, tablet in hand. Can I help you? I asked, walking down the gravel. She barely flinched. Mrs. Kendrick, HOA president. I'm documenting your violations. I stood tall. I'm not in your HOA. My farm's been here decades longer than your community. Her smile was rehearsed. That's a common misconception. When Pinecrest was established, all land within township limits fell under our jurisdiction. Your property causes several issues. Like what? Non-standard structures, commercial traffic, unauthorized agriculture, and those solar panels, absolutely forbidden. I bit my tongue. Those solar panels were installed legally, and the people you saw, friends and family helping with the honey harvest. I don't sell anything. Well, the board will decide. Thursday, 7 p.m. I suggest you attend. She turned to leave. Oh, and those rain barrels must be removed. They are visually inconsistent with the neighborhood. Scene 3. The storm. That evening, dark clouds rolled in. The first big storm of spring. I sat on the porch, listening to the rain beat the roof as the wind howled through the trees. Then the lights flickered and went out, but not at my place. My grandfather's hydro system kicked in instantly, as it always had. And now, powered by solar backup too, my home glowed like a beacon in a sea of darkness. Then came a text from Tyler. Power's out across the neighborhood, except your place. Also, your generator feeds the emergency pump station. Did you know that? What? A second message came through. Found some old township maps. We need to talk. Outside, I saw flashlights flickering in windows. And through the rain, Mrs. Kendrick's SUV pulled up to my mailbox. She stared at my lit windows for a long moment, and then drove away. Scene 4. The pushback begins. At dawn, I was already digging through my grandfather's old documents. And there it was, everything. The deed, the water rights, the permits. My grandfather had done everything legally, by the book. That's when I heard the cars. A line of vehicles pulled into the driveway. Mrs. Kendrick stepped out first, flanked by a man in a tailored suit and a small army with clipboards and cameras. They marched toward my porch like it was an ambush. "This is Mr. Reynolds from the county assessor's office," she said coldly. "We're here about your unpermitted power source and the violations." I didn't blink. I stepped forward and held up the paperwork. And that's where the real story begins. I held out my grandfather's documents like a shield. Every permit, every right, signed and sealed from as far back as 1952. The hydroelectric system, fully legal. Maintained the code, every detail, intact, but Mrs. Kendrick didn't flinch. The HOA covenants prohibit private power generation, she said sharply. It's a safety hazard, and visually disruptive. I met her gaze. I'm not part of your HOA, I said, firm and clear. Before she could argue, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses stepped forward. There's some confusion about that, he said smoothly. Walter Green, HOA legal counsel. There's an old development clause from 1985. It includes authority over adjacent properties. Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from Tyler. Don't sign anything. On my way with the maps. I needed time. I'd like to review that agreement, I said, stalling, and I'll be consulting my own attorney before any discussion. Mrs. Kendrick's polite mask slipped. This isn't a negotiation, she snapped. The board has voted. You have 30 days to bring this property into compliance or face daily fines. By what authority? I asked. A new voice chimed in. Mr. Reynolds from the assessor's office. Township Ordinance 15B, he said flatly. It allows for enforcement of community standards in rural-urban transition zones. I opened my mouth to respond, but then the sky darkened like a warning. A bolt of lightning split the air, followed by a thunderclap that shook the porch. The group flinched. Perhaps we should reconvene, Mr. Reynolds muttered, backing toward his car. One by one, they retreated. Moments later, Tyler's old pickup truck fishtailed into my drive. He jumped out, soaked and breathless, holding a cardboard tube. Did they mention the generator? He asked. They said it might interfere with the township grid, I replied. He shook his head. It's bigger than that. Come inside. I've got something to show you. The reveal, maps and secrets. On my kitchen table, Tyler rolled out a series of old township maps. See this blue line? He pointed. That's an emergency power conduit installed during the 1970s energy crisis. Your grandfather let them connect his hydro system to the township water pump as a backup, legally. I blinked. I knew about the generator, but not that connection. Then Tyler pulled out a newer map. Look here. When they built Pinecrest Village, they tapped into that line, without proper easement. They've been using your system as their emergency power source for 30 years. I stared at the map as the lights flickered again. Outside, the neighborhood sat in darkness. My farm glowed. That's why Kendrick looked so nervous during the blackout, I whispered. They depend on me. Tyler nodded. It gets better, or worse, depending on your view. North Star Developments can't break ground on their new condos without guaranteed water and power redundancy. Your land, your system, is what's keeping their project from moving forward. Flashback, ties to the past. The next morning, I drove to the county records office. An older clerk named Diane lit up when I introduced myself. Oh, Harold's grandson. Your grandfather was brilliant. Set up that generator before anyone thought solar or hydro were practical. I asked her if he knew about the development tapping into his system. She adjusted her glasses. There was supposed to be compensation and a formal agreement. But after Harold passed, it looks like they just quietly kept using it. Never told your parents. She handed me more documents, permits, maps, meeting minutes. Proof that not only had they connected illegally, they built entire infrastructure relying on it. I left with a folder full of leverage. The media arrives. Rain pounded the windshield as I drove home. Trees had fallen across back roads. Portable generators buzzed in Pinecrest Village. When I reached my gate, a news van was parked by the mailbox. A reporter stood with a cameraman, talking to my elderly neighbor, Mr. Finch, the same man who had quietly waved to me during Kendrick's first visit. I stepped out of the truck. Can I help you? The reporter turned. Are you the owner of this farm? I'm Rebecca Chun, Channel 8 News. Mr. Finch said your property is the only one with power during the blackout. Before I could respond, a silver SUV screeched to a halt. Mrs. Kendrick stormed out, fury written across her face. This is private property, she barked at the camera. The HOA has not authorized any media presence. Rebecca held her ground. We're on public easement. interviewing residents about the outage. This isn't HOA property. Mrs. Kendrick spun toward me. You call the media, trying to make a circus out of this. I raised an eyebrow. I just got here. Then Mr. Finch stepped forward. His voice was soft, but steady. I called them. Someone needed to tell the truth. Mr. Finch's voice trembled, but his words cut through the rain like thunder. People need to know what's going on. My wife's oxygen machine runs on that emergency backup. The battery lasts 6 hours. Without this farmed power system, she'd be in the hospital right now. Mrs. Kendrick froze. Emergency circuit, she repeated, clearly blindsided. Mr. Finch pointed to a small metal box bolted to the side of his garage. The developers installed it when the house was built, said it was tied into some backup system for medical needs. It's worked through every blackout for 15 years. Never failed once. The reporter's eyes widened. So some homes in Pinecrest have emergency power from this farm, and others don't? Who decides that? No one, I replied, unrolling Tyler's maps. It wasn't official. My grandfather set it up during the energy crisis. The township was supposed to formalize the agreement, but after he passed, they just kept using it. No payment, no paperwork. Rebecca turned to Mrs. Kendrick, microphone raised. Is the HOA aware that you've been drawing emergency power from private property without compensation? Mrs. Kendrick's smile was gone. This is a complex issue currently being addressed through appropriate legal channels, she said tightly. The HOA is merely enforcing community standards that this property continues to violate. What violations? Rebecca pressed. Unauthorized commercial activity, unapproved structures, aesthetic inconsistencies. Mr. Finch let out a sharp laugh. You mean the vegetable beds? You're calling it a violation because he grows food instead of wasting water on a useless lawn? Heaven forbid we eat tomatoes instead of stair grass. The camera kept rolling. Every word, every reaction, captured. Mrs. Kendrick realized too late. No comment, she snapped, turning on her heel and retreating to her car. As she drove away, Rebecca turned to me. Would you be willing to speak on camera? It's starting to sound like a real David versus Goliath story. I'll need to consult my attorney, I replied carefully, but I can show you the hydro system if you want. The setup, a legal twist. As the news crew filmed my modest setup, the humming generator, the steady water flow, I got a text from an unknown number. Emergency HOA board meeting. 8 p.m. Power infrastructure. Your presence requested. Walter Green, HOA counsel. Later that afternoon, Tyler returned, and he wasn't alone. With him was Emma, his cousin, an environmental law attorney. Emma scanned my documents like a hawk. You've got a case. They've used your infrastructure for decades without legal right. And now they want to fine you out of existence? No, we're going to the meeting. But first, she smiled. Let's prepare something they won't forget. At her suggestion, we walked out to the shed that housed a connection point, a heavy-duty switch that determined whether power from my generator flowed to the Pinecrest emergency lines. You're within your rights to shut this off, Emma said calmly. It's on your land. No easement. No contract. I stared at the switch, thinking about Mr. Finch's wife. Emma placed a hand on my shoulder. That's why we don't flip it now. But they need to understand this is power they've taken for granted. The storm builds, and so does public interest. Storm warnings flash on every screen. High winds, flash floods, possible tornadoes. My phone buzzed nonstop with texts. Neighbors I'd never even spoken to are now asking the same thing. Will your backup system still work tonight? That evening's news broadcast didn't hold back. Footage of the generator. Clips of Mr. Finch describing his wife's oxygen needs. And a final, piercing question from Rebecca Chun. Who really holds the power in Pinecrest Village? The HOA or the farm they're trying to shut down? The confrontation, lines are drawn. Just before 8 p.m., I stood by the window. Lightning crackled across the darkening sky. Then, headlights. One by one, 6 cars pulled into my driveway. Mrs. Kendrick's red SUV led the caravan. Board members emerged, their expressions grim. She stormed forward, paper clenched in her fist. "You've gone too far," she shouted. "People need refrigerated medication. Mr. Donahue missed a video deposition. This is criminal." The others fanned out behind her like backup singers in a power shoot musical. "Good evening," I said calmly. "Coffee." "Don't play games," she snapped. "This all started after your little performance on the news." She shoved a folded paper at me. "This is a cease and desist. You're being sued for interference with public utilities." I glanced at it but didn't reach for it. "Not sure what you're implying," I said mildly. "Bad storms lately. Funny how this place still has lights, though." "Exactly," muttered Mr. Peterson, the HOA treasurer, crossing his arms. "Your lights stay on while everyone else sits in the dark." I stepped inside and returned with a folder I'd been waiting to hand over. "If we're exchanging paperwork now," I said, "you might want to look through these." Mrs. Kendrick yanked it from my hands, flipping it open. Her expression shifted fast, from defiance to disbelief. "These are my grandfather's original property deeds, water rights certificates, and engineering permits, dated 1943. I explained. "This hydro system's been here for 80 years. Before your houses, before the HOA, there's no legal obligation for me to power a neighborhood that was built around us." The board members leaned in. Mr. Weston, the oldest of them, thick glasses, red bow tie, adjusted his specs to get a closer look. "Elaine," he said slowly, his right. "These documents predate the subdivision by decades." Mrs. Kendrick's face hardened. "That's impossible. The developers assured us." "They misled you," I cut in, "just like they're misleading you now." I pulled out my phone. "Tyler submitted a public records request last week. You should see what came back." I tapped to a folder of emails, names, deals, promises. North Star offered certain board members discounted condos in their new Riverside project, premium views, luxury finishes. Faces blanched. Names were visible: Kendrick, Peterson, Martinez, and Leong. All current board members, except Mr. Weston. "You hacked our emails." Mrs. Kendrick gasped. "No, these are public records," I replied calmly. "HOA communications are subject to transparency laws in this county." Mr. Weston turned toward her, his face pale. "You never told us about any of this. We were supposed to vote on conflict of interest." The mood turned fast. The unity they'd arrived with dissolved into tension and mistrust. "I never wanted this," I said quietly. "I just wanted to run my little farm, grow my vegetables, share what I could." Before anyone could respond, a car door slammed behind them. A young woman with bright blue hair approached, a backpack covered in eco-stickers slung over one shoulder. "Mom, what's going on?" Mrs. Kendrick stiffened. "Jade, go back inside. This doesn't concern you." But Jade had already recognized the setting. "Wait, this is a sustainable farm. The one Professor Garcia uses as a case study," she asked, eyes wide. "I've seen pictures of this micro-hydro system. Our class was hoping to visit it." Mrs. Kendrick was speechless. "This isn't a class trip, Jade," she snapped. "This is a zoning violation." "No," Jade shot back. "This is exactly what we're supposed to be preserving. You'd bulldoze all this for another row of condos." The board members didn't know what to say. Jade's words pierced deeper than mine ever could. "It's not about sustainability," Mrs. Kendrick muttered. "It's about property values." "No," Mr. Weston said sternly, waving the email printouts. "It's about kickbacks and power." Arguments broke out. Fingers pointed. Some board members started blaming each other. As thunder rumbled overhead, I calmly said, "You should head home. Another storm's rolling in." Mrs. Kendrick gave me one last cold stare. "This isn't over," she hissed. Lightning split the sky behind her. As they hurried back to their cars, Jade slipped me a scrap of paper, her email address. "Please let me know if your class can visit," she whispered. Rain started falling hard as I stood on the porch. My phone buzzed, a storm warning. More power outages expected. I stared at the control app for my generator. My thumb hovered over the switch. Would I keep helping the same people who tried to take everything from me? Or would I be the bigger person? That night, the community center was packed. The mayor opened the emergency meeting. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered. This had gone from a zoning dispute to a town-wide identity crisis. When it was my turn, I stepped up to the microphone. I'm not a botanical garden, I began, but maybe I should be. I showed photos of my grandfather building the hydro system during World War II and a map of how it powered not just our home, but half the neighborhood for decades. When I found out the HOA had been using my system without permission, I wasn't angry because I didn't want to help. I was angry because instead of asking, they tried to take. I paused, but I don't want to fight anymore. I want to build. Then I laid out my proposal, a cooperative microgrid. Clean energy, shared benefits, lower bills, community ownership. Gasps filled the room. And then Jade stood up. My university's environmental science department wants to support this, she announced. They've approved a $250,000 grant to turn this farm into a teaching facility. The crowd erupted. North Star's executives rushed the MIC, desperate to regain control. This is amateur hour. You want infinity pools, not irrigation ditches, property values. But Tyler had receipts. Photos of half-built North Star projects abandoned across 3 counties. They buy in, promise luxury, then pull out when it gets tough. People booed. The mayor called for a vote. 82% supported my cooperative energy plan. North Star walked out. Months later, the transformation was real. New turbines powered the homes. The garden had a waiting list. The barn became a learning center. And one spring morning, a familiar red SUV pulled into the driveway. Mrs. Kendrick stepped out, awkwardly holding a tray of seedlings. My plot's number 47, right? I nodded. Right next to Jade's. Tomatoes already in the ground. This wasn't my idea, she muttered. Jade insisted. I handed her a trowel. Welcome to the garden, neighbor. She hesitated, then took it. As we dug in silence, she finally said, got an offer to sell the house yesterday. Young couple. They said they want him because of the cooperative. You gonna sell? She looked around, at the creek, at Jade chatting with the mayor, at the humming power lines. No, she said softly. Some things are worth more than money. I nodded. It wasn't an apology, but it was close. And in that moment, I realized, sometimes, the real victory is turning your fiercest opponent into your neighbor.